भारत और जापान रो संपर्क समग्र पृथ्वी रे केते प्रभावशाली
आई वुड मु कहमी तो मैंने एक्चुअली दुनिया रे एटा गोटे रोल मॉडल बोली के देखबा कथा एक्चुअली बिकॉज एते एते वर्ष रो हमें जिन प्रकार संपर्क अच्छे हेतरे हेट्रेट न खाली प्यार अच्छे जिनटा कि अलग एशियन कंट्री संगे प्यार भी अच्छे किंतु हेट्रेट भी अच्छे एटे बड़ विश्व युद्ध खत्म हो गला इटा के कांग्रेस रहबा और वन फाइनल थिंग आई टेल यू न्यूक्लियर वेपन रो जन प्रभाव ता जन ह्यूमैनिटी हैज फेस्ड फ्रॉम हिरोशिमा एंड नागासाकी केनसी भी बुद्धू कंट्री केते पागल हेले भी कि नॉर्थ कोरिया रो देखो नि धमकी दूजे बट डू यू थिंक ही विल यूज इट ही विल नेवर यूज इट तार पाखे रखचे एज ए मीन्स ऑफ रिजिम सर्वाइवल
जोहार दर्शक बंधु गार्गी न्यूज इंडिया के हमें आपण को स्वागत करुचु इतार भितरे गार्गी न्यूज इंडिया गोटे बरस पूरा करिछे ये गोटे बरस भितरे हमें विभिन्न क्षेत्र विभिन्न व्यक्ति विशेष को डाकिछु पॉडकास्ट करिछु आपण को आगे हमें परसी देइछु इतिहास संस्कृति परिवेश अर्थनीति एंता विभिन्न टॉपिक उपरे हमर आलोचना हेछि आज आमे विदेश नीति उपरे गोटे चर्चा करवा के जाउछु आइटा वर्षे परे पहला थर लगी विदेश नीति उपरे चर्चा होछि केनसी भी राष्ट्र तार जन शासन चलाबा शासन प्रशासन चलाबा आभ्यंतरीण शासन लगी गोटे प्रकार नीति नियम थिसी आउ बाह्य जन संपर्क बाह्य राष्ट्र मान संगे जन संपर्क सेटा विदेश नीति सेथि लगी आउ गोटे प्रकार नीति थीसी से विदेश नीति प्राय प्रत्येक राष्ट्र चली आईसी वर्ष को वर्ष चली आईसी विभिन्न समय रे स्थान काल पात्र अनुसार से विदेश नीति रे किछिटा परिवर्तन होतीसी किंतु बड़ धৰণৰ किछि एंता परिवर्तन नहीं हुए जेनटा मूलभूत ढांचा थीसी पहलानु सेटा ही प्राय प्राय सेटा माने सेटा को अनुसरण करा हेसी भारत भी हेंता तार आभ्यंतरीण शासन लगी शासन प्रशासन लगी गोटे नीति नियम रखीचे आउ विदेश मानकर संगे विदेशी राष्ट्र मानकर संगे संपर्क रखवार लगी गोटे विदेश नीति रखीचे से विदेश नीति चली आसचे तार संगे भारत विभिन्न राष्ट्र संगे अलग अलग नीति भारत अमेरिका भारत चीन भारत रशिया एंता अलग अलग बड़ बड़ राष्ट्र संगे गोटे प्रकार किंतु भारत रो गोटे नीति हला जेनटा हमरो महान प्राचीन कालरू वसुधैव कुटुंबकम सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामया इटा भारत वर्षर गोटे मूल मंत्र जेनटा कि विदेश नीति रे भी सेटा प्रतिफलन हेसी आज आमर संगे विदेश नीति बाबद रे चर्चा करबा लगी अछन विशिष्ट रणनीतिक विश्लेषक विशेषकर भारत जापान भारत उत्तर कोरिया दक्षिण कोरिया ये सबू राष्ट्र संगे जन संपर्क अच्छे से उपरे जे विशारदान डॉक्टर राजाराम पंडा से आम संगे उपस्थित अच्छन आपण को आज हमें स्वागत कर चर्चा के
नमस्कार
आपण आज समय बाहर कले दिल्ली रू आइसन हम लगे समय बाहर कले हेते लगे हमें आपण पाखरे बहुत बहुत कृतज्ञ पहला हमें गोटे साधारण भाषा रे इस चर्चा के आरंभ करमा यहाँ दे युद्ध चली यूक्रेन रशिया रो युद्ध चली किसी वर्ष धरिक हेलान से सभा ना नाई नबार एबे किछि मास हला अमेरिका ईरान इे आमर इस्राएल ईरान एंता सेन किछि राष्ट्र मिसी जाइछन ई जेन युद्धटा होचे इतार किछि कारणटा काना है आ इता आवश्यकता थिला के
आवश्यकता तो बिल्कुल नहीं थी आज्ञा ये जदि आम यूक्रेन कथा माने यूक्रेन विषय जो पहला भाबा यहाँ जिते बेले यूएसएसआर जो डिसइंटीग्रेट होगला गोर्बाचव समय से बेले तो एटा हला किंतु एतिरे पुटिन वर्तमान पुटिन नेशनल प्रेसिडेंट से हेतरे केते केते माने इश्यूज कैसे एक्सेप्ट करवार लगी नहीं चाहिए तो हेतले यूक्रेन हेजन के एक्सपेंशनिज्म त माने केनते कि तांग देशर त से तांग साइकोलॉजिकली से एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर परवा जे एटा त माने पार्ट ऑफ रशिया थिला एसन काटा उड़ी जे हेटा के हमर ये टेरिटरी अंदर के मैं अनमा बोलिकी और तापर इटा गोटे एंगल सेकेंड थिंग इज रिसोर्स फैक्टर ऑल्सो एछन जितके बेले एटा माने डिसइंटीग्रेट हेतला यूक्रेन गोटे डील हेतला जे जितके तमने ताकर न्यूक्लियर एस्टाब्लिशमेंट अच्छे थिला से समय यूक्रेन जे थिला सब गुड़ा कटा ये रशिया कंट्रोल के पलाइला मैं ये यूएसएसआर रो जदि माने तांगर जो डील समय रे सपोज ये न्यूक्लियर तांगर जो एसेट्स सब जो थिला यूक्रेन पाखरे जदि एछन तक थिता बोले आपण भाभी परबे ये पुटिन रो हिम्मत होता जे कि तो अटैक करता लगे नहीं करता और सेम थिंग एछन का होची इन है ये मिडिल ईस्ट रे जेते बेले ये गडाफी लिबिया रो और सदाम हुसैन इराक रो तांकर अवस्था कण हला आम जदि सेम जदि एनालोजी आम जदि एप्लाय करमा ईरान उपरे हो या नॉर्थ कोरिया के ऊपर नॉर्थ कोरिया छोटे कंट्री है किंतु आपको के हले नहीं परबार क्या हले नहीं परबार पोजिशन ऑफ न्यूक्लियर वेपन इज द बिगेस्ट डिटरेंस दी आज जदि से कहूँ जे अमेरिका और इवन अदर जी जितके असन कंट्री से कहूँ जे डीन्यूक्लियराइज करो तुमको आम सपोर्ट करमु नॉर्थ कोरिया किम जोंग उन से मूर्ख नुहे तमर एतकी तमने यूनाइटेड सैंक्शन बायलैटरल सैंक्शन गुड़ाक तौर पर कितनी केते इंपोज हीजिए बट द स्मॉल कंट्री हैज स्टिल सर्वाइव्ड ताको तमने डी न्यूक्लियर जोड़े सबमिट कला फर्स्ट टर्म रे ट्रम्प सिंगापुर और हनोरे किछ ना हला बिकॉज ही तार से जिन पोजीशन है से अटल अछि का के अटल अछि से देखि जे लिबिया रे कना अवस्था और ये इराक रे कना अवस्था ला तो सेम अवस्था ताको हवा सेम काइंड ऑफ सेम माने जदि रैशनल जदि अपन अप्लाई करबे टू ईरान तो ईरान बेसन का कमजोर न है ईरान एसन का स्टिल ईरान हैज द ये हो जे तो न्यूक्लियर एसेट सब तो ये ध्वंस कर दिया और हमको सरेंडर कर दिया ईरान नहीं करे एंड आई डोंट थिंक ईरान विल ever likely to surrender those assets जे इन द मूवमेंट मन कर कला और ईरान तो आ गोटे वेपन अच्छे हरमुज के जन बंद करूँ सब गुड़ाक कहीं करूँ एंड अमेरिका एसन का इन सिंपल टर्म आम सम्बलपुरी लैंग्वेज जब कह बेले दिस इज शेयर दादागिरी पूरा दादागिरी एटा के तो दिस इज समथिंग हाईली अनएक्सेप्टेबल एटलिस्ट टू मी एज ए स्कॉलर एज एन एनालिस्ट तो जहाँ करूँ ये तार जो मागाज एंड मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन प्रोजेक्ट करूँ I think this is very short-sighted और तार ट्रम्प रो एसन का जदि मेन टारगेट तार राइवल जदि भावु चाइना संगे तो लड़ चाइना संगे तोर जदि हेमस जो चार चाइना संगे लड़ ये छोट छोट कंट्री मन को अटैक करके तो दादागिरी कहीं देखुछु जेतला उचित न है जेतला हम कहू जे अमेरिका रा दादागिरी निश्चित भाव दादागिरी होछि इटा तो बाकी सब जो कंट्री माने अच्छे से माने काई थले केवल खाली निंदा कर दउछन और चुपचाप काई रहउछन देखो मैंने ये जहाँ हेले भी आम गोटे फैक्ट के तो आम इग्नोर कर नहीं पार्नु एसन का स्टिल अमेरिका इज सुपर पावर निश्चित और सब स्मॉल कंट्री इंडिविजुअली कहा के अमेरिका के टक्कर कर पार्बार हिम्मत कार नहीं न और आम एसन का विदाउट गेटिंग इन्वॉल्व डायरेक्टली और इनडायरेक्टली ऑल ऑफ अस आर अफेक्टेड ऑल ऑफ अस ऑयल दर्शन का आसूँ ऑयल रो डिसरप्शन इन द सप्लाई से हरमुज रो ईरान बंद करू कि जहाँ भी हो अच्छा देखो ये गोटे हफ्ताह के दाम बढ़ीगला गोटे सप्ताह प्राय 7 8 बढ़ीगला तो दैट विल बी इमीडिएट रिपल इफेक्ट सब किसी दाम बढ़ी जन का एंड हु आम ऐसे कथा लगुना मैंने एलपीजी विषय कथा लगुना मैंने कॉमन मैन और एवरी ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कॉस्ट बढ़ला मैंने दाम बढ़ला सब वेजिटेबल एवरीथिंग बढ़वा दाम इटा आमर बंटी इना नुहे अच्छा दैट अदर थिंग इज कंट्रीज लाइक साउथ कोरिया जापान तांगर 2 मास 3 मास तक से रिजर्व रखीछन आमर एतकी नाई न और आमर पॉपुलेशन और आमर डोमेस्टिक नीड एंड डिमांड इज ह्यूज तो कि रिजर्व ना ना तापर फॉरेन इलेक्शन कोडा फिर सब पार ही दैट इज वन सेकंड थिंग इज रशिया के जदि अगेन इफ आई कैन ब्रिंग बैक रशिया अगेन अमेरिका को जे ये यूक्रेन वॉर लगे माने यू डोंट बाय ए पॉलिसी रे इंडिया हैज स्टूड फर्म माने वी विल बाय ऑयल फ्रॉम the sources, whichever sources where we can get cheaper. And Russia संगे आमर special relation है, and on this I admire the foreign policy position of our government.
सेरा बोले भारत कहू छे जे हमें रशिया रो नेमु
हमें
हमर स्वार्थ दृष्टि
Russia is a time tested friend for us.
निश्चित भाबरे
बहुत not today.
हां
अब 71 example में दउतली time tested friend, but there is a dark side. There is a dark side which our media has rarely highlighted. I will tell you that. Action का Russia जन fight कुछ है against Ukraine. They are now sort of manpower to fight. Number one, they are sort of weapons also to fight. Russia. How to get the manpower? There have been cases. I will not give you the name. One of my known persons was doing that business. They are not forcefully recruiting foreigners who are there on business. Conscription, corruption without those foreigners who can't even write anything. They are all virtually kidnapped. Some documents, some signed good decisions. I am voluntarily, I am joining to fight your Ukraine war. Your war, for you, I am fighting. This is absolutely wrong. North Korea being an ally, North Korea के 2024 I think Putin वाला जन के तार संगठन हमारे जन का जबरदस्त मैंने क्लोजनेस संपर्क दोस्ती ही है चाइना संग तो थिला ही ला चाइना संग तो तारा relationship that is called like lips and teeth kind of relationship ऐसे ना रशिया संग रही है. So this is another factor. Russia, China, North Korea getting together is a big worry for whom?
America.
Trump. This is a new development in our part of the world. So Russia is because of this special kind of treaty arrangement with North Korea. North Korea is a communist country, dictatorial. तो चाहे करवा ना. He's sending a lot of soldiers, and many people are died also there. But he's not bothered. Photo forward to fight for Russia, and in return. Russia is now sending advanced technology, which helps Kim Jong-un to further sophisticate his missile and nuclear development program. So this is a kind of win-win situation for both.
अमेरिकार राष्ट्रपति ट्रम्प को गोटे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर हिसाब रे गोटे स्टेट्समैन हिसाब रे आपण केंती आकलन करसन.
He is a very cheap quality leader, I would say, very cheap quality. No leader can the way Nobel Prize issue, does it speak well on, for an American president to demand that I deserve this Nobel Prize? And he lobbied and he told lies and lies and lies. कितने बार how many times he has claimed that India Pakistan संगे मैं mediate कर जे तो ceasefire वाला बोली करे. All bullshit. And there are some also humorous jokes also against it, that I did this, I did that, and I should be given Nobel Prize.
व्यक्ति सकाले जन कथाटा कहूची संध्या बेल को से
कथा change कर दूचे. So there is no consistency in his, so he does not deserve to be the president there. I don't know why American people have
ताले अमेरिका का अभ्यंतरण असंतोष बढ़भार चलजी बढ़ुची.
As I said in the beginning, he is the biggest disruptor of the world order. हमें तार टाइम एक्शन देखुन तार टाइम केते 2 वर्ष के 2.5 वर्ष केते होछे से स्टिल ट्राई करू जे थर्ड टर्म रे मैं भ्रम बोलिकरी एंड नवंबर रे एक्शन तार अछि तार इलेक्शन होछे नवंबर रे he will try to sabotage some, maybe do some illegal activities and amend the constitution and third term to get agenda ka as per the present laws of the American government. No president can run for the third term as of now. Hata ki change karoi chahuche. Hata bi claim korchi je I deserve to remain and be the president for the third term.
विभिन्न इश्यू रे इवन तंकर कोर्ट रु से झटका भी पाउछन
Even head coach, I mean, his mental state of affair is not stable. But again, at the same time, as I said, America still is the superpower, single superpower. So it is not in anybody's interest to fight directly because you can't face. तो हमें ऐसे इनका जज दिन तक अच्छे प्रेसिडेंट आई थिंक हमको जलवा के पड़वा
अच्छा भारत और चीन भितर वर्तमान केंति संपर्क अछि
भारत चीन संगे हमर तो पास्ट चानी छन युद्ध बुद्ध होई छे एखनका पॉलिटिकल हमर बॉर्डर इश्यू गुडा सब अच्छे किंतु हमर डायलॉग चली छे देयर इज नथिंग वेरी मेजर दैट वी शुड वरी अबाउट इट एंड our diplomacy is very strong and we are able to manage whenever the short more skirmishes are again at the manage at the bilateral level at manage hey hoche amaro actually main interest is economic because China needs us, we need China. That is where the
दोहे परस्पर आवश्यकता
welfare of people of both the countries, we need to keep that focus in mind. Setile beli kare मजी kana ऐसी based on any particular जनता for example rare earth में बंद कर दिली वाला अमेरिका तार China will use whatever are the leverages अच्छे ता पकड़े China will use that is but expected. तो हेन ता पकड़ो इशू आमर संगे नहीं हवा रुचि so diplomacy can play to avoid similar kind of situation if it arises because our main objective hava kotha kana ki our economies should remain complementary and both sides need to keep this at a win-win situation mane hetere trade investment composition of trade kada hoche tariff rate kana hala those things are we are focusing FTA sign karo tabar there are bilateral level to hegala there are some regional forums also seta ki they are all being leveraged jendere ame both of us are members to jendi south east SCO hegala Asian summit hegala तापर हमारे 2-on-2 dialogue अल्ला हमारे को ले सेन डिफेंस मिनिस्टर प्राइम मिनिस्टर को ले so there are many multiple mechanisms so these are being used very diplomatically to stabilize to keep the situation stable not to disrupt it America to बोले करना to disrupt so and this is not only with China हमारा तो पूरा जत की South Asian countries जत की ओशन or even East Asian countries major allies सबका संगे हमारा जो हमार पहला तो नरसिम्हा राव हमारे जन लुकिश पॉलिसी कला मोदी काना कला मोदी ताको एक्टिस्ट पॉलिसी मैंने ताको रीनेम कला एक्टिस्ट पॉलिसी मींस व्हाट लुकिश पॉलिसी वाज जस्ट ए पॉलिसी प्रिस्क्रिप्शन एक्टिस्ट पॉलिसी इन बाय कन्वर्सेशन विल मीन by injecting some activism to the policy खाली कहले ना होए करी के देखो
माने आचरण उच्चारण समान हवा
exactly हेते लेवल करी अब तक देखो हमर नॉर्थ ईस्ट जे देखबे नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया जे देखबे that area is a very important gateway for us to reach to Southeast Asia Myanmar रे एते गंडगोल होची but that is the only gateway Myanmar के एसन का Myanmar is like a pariah state for ASEAN members Can we do the same? Can we take the same attitude from our side? We cannot. Diplomatically हो, strategically हो, culturally भी हो. Culturally भी हमारे से historical links. तो even before ये जो coup हला, तार आगुर भी military route ले भी, we continue to engage. जदि ना कर्मा बोले हमारे activist policy टा किसी नहीं जाए. मैंने we can't execute it. We can't go. ये जो कालादान जो हाईवे जो that project and all ये सब बड़ा वजन अच्छी they're all in the blueprints in the करीब on road connectivity of to Cambodia Vietnam going via Thailand इटा हेले अपना कर कितने trade movement of trade movement of man people कितने smooth ही जो सेतरे just we can imagine the situation where अपने खुद रहना मैं ये कुटुंब बाबा का वाला कुछ कुछ ले hey perspective जो देखने वाले is it a very beautiful idea we must live together and এটা তো अच्छा का है ला अपन जैसे historically जो देखने এটা बहुत पुराना कथा centuries 16th and 7th 8th century तो हमारे जैसे we have got civilization links dating back to Buddhism. Buddhism ভিতরে যদি আমি যদি কথা লাগমা বলে এটা ইট ইজ এ লং স্টোরি তো আমার ফোকাস শুড বি মোর টুয়ার্ডস এশিয়া বিকজ উই স্টে জিওগ্রাফিক্যালি ইন এশিয়া উই আর লোকেটেড ইন এশিয়া জিওগ্রাফিক্যালি তো আমার এখানকা এ ফরেন পলিসির যে নীতি হইলে দিস শুড বি মোর ডাইরেক্টেড মোর ফোকাস টুয়ার্ডস साउथ ईस्ट एशिया ई समय आई डोंट मीन टू से दैट आमे वेस्ट के यूरोप के आमे भूली जान नुए
अच्छा मोदी को सरकार आसला पर 2014 पर यार को 12 वर्ष हे गलानो हमर विदेश नीति रे किछि किछि परिवर्तन मेजर किछि परिवर्तन घटुची दृष्टिभंगी सब
देखो एटा नहीं होई काने बेले द कोर फोकस तो अछि सेम कोर फोकस रे न किंतु दी हाउ एक्चुअली मोदी गवर्नमेंट हैज how Modi government has approached it, ठीक है, तार thrust has slightly changed with the aim to make it little better. It is
जंदा अपन एक आगु कोदले एक्टिस्ट पॉलिसी एंडा को
हां एक्टिव फर्स्ट ने एक्टिव पॉलिसी ता हमर एशिया ऊपर अपन रे यूरोप मन सेम एनालॉजी कैन नॉट बी अप्लाइड ऑन द यूरोप अच्छा देखो ना अभी लास्ट month this month itself Modi 5 countries visit gala. I wrote a long article on that also. I assessed what are the loss and gain. There is no loss. It is he has gone to some countries where no prime minister has ever visited. 43 years for every good can get in Norway and Sweden. I don't remember. And he went there. What for? Action ka the Modi visited in 5 countries, European countries plus UAE can gala. या संगे आपण लिंक करून विथ द डेवलपमेंट इन वेस्ट एशिया यार संगे जैन कंट्री को आम तमने हिस्टोरिकली इन द पास्ट आम आई वुड से नेग्लेक्ट बट वी हैड अंडरप्लेड द रिलेशनशिप टू बिल्ड रिलेशंस विथ दैट पर्टिकुलर कंट्री एशन काम को कहां करी मोदी गवर्नमेंट व्हाई सडनली फेल्ड वी नीड फ्रेंड्स दैट इज वन एस्पेक्ट अनदर एंगल यदि देखबे इंडिया इज अ राइजिंग पावर आमे आमर पॉइंट टू देखले खाली नहीं हुए आमर अचनका एज ए राइजिंग पावर इंडिया रा भी किसी रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अच्छे टू लुक आफ्टर और केयर फॉर द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ द स्मॉलर कंट्रीज दे लुक विथ सम एस्पिरेशन विथ सम एक्सपेक्टेशन विथ सम होप टुवर्ड्स इंडिया and it is obligatory for India to also accordingly respond and India has done that covid समय देखो covid समय मैंने जब वैक्सीन डेवलप होला
बहुत राष्ट्रों को दिया है
दे दीजिए व्हाई मैंने was there any somebody told us that you help them no this is our part of our historical culture हमें पहुंचलु वेर इन द मिडिल ऑफ ए कॉन्फ्रेंस एंड पूरा हिली गला पूरा एकदम एनालाइज वेरी स्कैरी एनीवे तापरे जे हला जन डिवास्टेशन हला बहुत लोग मरले न्यूक्लियर डिकेज हला देयर वाज ए न्यूक्लियर मेल्टडाउन इंडिया रो कोन रेस्पॉन्स हला इंडिया सेंड इन इमीडिएटली ए मेडिकल टीम टू रेस्क्यू एंड दैट इज ए एज ए फ्रेंड एज ए वेले अमेरिका बोझकला हम हैदराबाद का ऑपरेशन तुम अच्छी तुम माने फ्रेंडशिप तुम मीन्स फ्रेंड तो मेरा ये इंडिया इमीडिएटली सेंट वन कंटिजेंट ऑफ विद मेडिकल मेडिसिन्स एंड टीम टू हेल्प देम दीज आर ऑल जेस्चर we must do it same thing also in the past also there have been some tsunami in Southeast Asian countries Philippines or some area India has responded so as a rising power India has to rise up to the expectation of the smaller countries some responsibility otherwise how do you claim to become a global power or rising power justification आपण कंती स्ट्रेंथन करबे
ई क्षेत्र में जस्ट जानवा को चाहूँ जे जिनटा सुपर पावर गुड़ा तो अच्छे अमेरिका हो चाइना हो रशिया हो इमान को छाड़ी दिले बाकी कंट्रीज गुड़ा को इमाने भारत रु काण आशा करूछन भारत पाखरु
अमर नहीं एशियन कंट्रीज से क्वेश्चन कि एशियन कंट्रीज एज आई सेड हमारा we need to देखो हमारा बिगेस्ट एसेट इज बिग पॉपुलेशन
जिनका को 35% यूथ पावर को आउची
सुनो को जे एशियन का देयर इज ए न्यू ट्रेंड व्हिच इज आल्सो इंडिया आल्सो विल बिकम sooner or later victim to that also will be we also India also will fall trap to that scenario. Ashanka, there is a new demographic issue. It's a big issue now in these small countries like Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. Ashanka, declining birth rate. That I am quite familiar and I have written quite a bit also on that. Let me give an example of Japan, since I work on that. But the same thing applies also to the other countries, even Singapore, Taiwan, and China, of course. China really is all another. Is on one child যে policy করে দিলা কেতে বছর ভুলে গেল না তার এটা but say for 25 30 years something that was in force. You know how much of population China lost? Over 350 million population lost. Ashanka जुड़े छुआ तो करो ही करो थर्ड चलने की भी मैंने इंसेंटिव भी वैल्यू है because Ashanka पछे तो मैं in another 50-60 years they can't have a population. There will be huge pressure on the government, which Japan is already facing. Japan Ashanka population 125-26 million, and there have been 7 and the birth rate is hovering between 1.4 to 1.5 Ashanka, which is much below the replacement level of 2.1. Tamane 2.1 বুঝলে তো 2.1 tamane gute a woman during her lifetime must give birth to 2.5 child to maintain the population balance, which at the moment Japan had a 1.4 1.5. tamane कम छह जन्म होचन और बेसी लोक गड़ एजेड होचन तो the aged population को who will support them? Pressure on the government. Medical health care givers नेनो तांको सेवा करबे लोक नेनो तापरे कम छह जन्म हेले तुम फैक्ट्री रे काम की करवा गवर्नमेंट काम की करवा इंडस्ट्री काम की करवा रेबेबली एट द सेम टाइम and this kind of जो situation जन क्रिएट जापान रे this is a very big population. हमर इंडिया रे जति हंता सिचुएशन हता there is an absorbing capacity because our strength is a big population. Tangar population is small. And the same thing also is happening in smaller countries like South Korea and Taiwan or even Singapore. So, despite this internal domestic challenge, Japan still feels racially superior. They still have that reluctance, I would say, to liberally allow foreign workers to settle down there. अच्छा actually भी अच्छे. अच्छा तो ये this government is Sane Takiji, she has taken a very tough position like this the Trump. Foreigner मान को worker मान को मैंने strict मैंने police रे तांको screening करा जाउचे visa नहीं तो बार. एबे गोटे there has been a case recently गोटे I think Indian chef was there for 20 years or something ताको बाहर कर दिला है ताको visa नहीं दिले renew नहीं कर ले बोले ऐला. And some studies say that Japan's population is in another 60-70 years will come down to 60-70 million. They're not bothered about that. So-called racial purity they want to maintain. Another example I'll give you. 2016 there have been let's talk about the cultural thing, cultural part. In 2016 there was one girl of mixed parentage of mother is Japanese, father is an Indian. And her name is Priyanka, Indian name, Yoshikawa, Japanese name, Priyanka Yoshikawa. 2016 she was crowned Miss Japan. There was uproar in Japan that how come she can become Miss Japan because she is not Japanese, full Japanese. And the children born of mixed parentage, they are contemptuously they are called as hapu. Half. HAFU. Acha. Hapu means half Japanese. So if they half Japanese is well, इधर को कने करी Miss Japan contest में तब eligible ला. What does it mean? Racial feeling of racial superiority. And it's about अच्छे बोले तांगरो if such feelings are there in their Japanese blood, government जब हला बोले तो they will be very happy. Despite that, they are not concerned about the country's future. Aging population percentage is rising so high, so fast. ଆପଣ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରିପାରିବେ ଜାପାନରେ 100 ବର୍ଷର ବେଶୀ ଜାପାନିଜ ପିପୁଲ ବୋଥ ମ୍ୟାନ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ୱିମେନ୍ କେତେ ହେଇଥିବେ କୁହନ୍ତୁ? କ୍ୟାନ୍ ୟୁ ଗେସ୍? କେତେ 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 ତାମାନେ ନମ୍ବର ଥିବେ?
ବହୁତ ସଂଖ୍ୟାରେ ସେମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ତି।
ମୋର ଦେନ୍ 1 ଲାଖ 100 ବର୍ଷର। ଆମର ଇନେ କେତେଟା ଆଖପାଖ ଆପଣ ନେପ କରି ପାରବେ?
ତାର କାରଣ କାଣା? ତାଙ୍କର ଜୀବନଶୈଳୀ ଗୋଟେ ଭଲ
ଜାପାନରେ କାଣା କି ମାନେ ସବୁ ଯେମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ କ୍ଲିନ୍ ଏୟାର, clean food, healthy living. These are all good medical care facilities available. This is municipally, longevity automatically is increasing. It is not the case earlier. It's now post war period pore eta. Kana lage 60 what sorry Japan to harigala pore tapore then the supreme American forces supreme commander of the allied powers general MacArthur senore taku democratic situation ko stabilize karala. A constitution was virtually imposed on them. Another thing very interesting thing I will just mention, our constitution either get third amendment hichi ketani kete thar number nahi I cannot say, but it is not
more than 80 times over.
Japan till now not even a single article of the constitution has ever been amended. You know why?
କେତେ ବର୍ଷ ପୁରୁଣା ତାଙ୍କର କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନ ଟା?
1990 post war pore
ଆଚ୍ଛା
52 or 53 re mane it was imposed
second world war ପରେ
not even one single article has been amended. Kai ki jete bele mane ye American jo occupation forces general MacArthur chen kola tabo set up kala democratic upon actually military dela na edire kana major thing let me mention, power of the emperor was absolutely crippled. Emperor became just a super head of the country. See, symbolic head. Constitution, two major articles were inserted. Generation ka present government starting from Abe onwards, there has been a systematic effort to amend the constitution. Kintu it is not that easy. Kaiki easy in a way, let me tell you briefly. Article 9 of the Constitution has provision which prohibits Japan to manufacture or export any armaments. Jindaki has already been partially diluted. Ebe, the Golamasabode, Ashanka, Sane Takeji government has already passed a law that we can export to only friendly countries with which we have some defense agreement. Jindaki India bhi oche 17 country ocean. There 17 country India bhi oche. India bhi chale sangare there can be some defense ye nena bika hi parva aichan kabhi ha hi parva. Kintu constitution ra mane eta open to any country which is in combat. Can judo aichan ka man kru to Iran ka suppose Japan bhejwa lagi jayega nahi Japan kaise sorry Iran kaise pote nahi pare because Iran is directly in war now. That is one. Manufacture karne paran jodi bhi karbo only for the internal use. It article 9 now check not to possess, not to export, not to manufacture. That is one. Second thing is article 96 is another article which puts stringent conditions to even initiate the process of amending a constitution, amending an article in the constitution. Kana hota hai? Two houses hoise Japanese parliament ka diet bolson DIET, House of Councillors and House of Representatives, lower house upper house amara bagita. Any motion to amend an article in the constitution has to be passed by 2/3 members of both the houses.
2/3 members
in both the houses. Suppose lower house re initiate hela 2/3 members re pass hegala tapore heda upper house gala sene 2/3 member mane heda pass kar dele, which has never happened. Kind of 2/3 membership single party has never enjoyed. Number one. Jodi bhi pass hegala tarpore that has to be referred, that has to be endorsed by a national referendum. all the eligible voters of the country must vote yes or no. And there is a very strong anti-nuclear, anti-military sentiment in the country. So it definitely over 70-80% will say no.
अच्छा
Jodi bhi man karo to rahegala eta. It has to be endorsed by the emperor. The process of 96, Article 96 to the amendment nahi barbar, the question of touching Article 9 doesn't arise. So Bartaman Kana Huche Abe tried. He was in a stable condition in terms of numbers. Article 9, Article 96 ko pehla ta maine see 2/3 majority ko what actually he tried to do is to amend it to make it simple majority. 2/3 agree 50% karo. That will be relatively easier. That also has failed. तांगर मैंने पब्लिक ओपिनियन କଥା କହୁଛି पब्लिक ओपिनियन ता माने एचन के एतकी स्ट्रांग जे एक तो होजे तांगर माने द रेशियल सुपीरियरिटी दैट फैक्टर आल्सो इज इंपैक्ट्स द पॉलिसी एंड गवर्नमेंट इस बुझन ता माने गोटे रीमिलिटराइजेशन जे गोटे तन फियर अछि जिन माने जिन दोस कंट्रीज व्हिच आर द विक्टिम्स ऑफ द जापानीज मिलिटरी ड्यूरिंग द वॉर से मानकर कंसर्न सर्टेनली अच्छा ने ये जो आर्म एक्सपोर्टर्स एंड लिबरल्स कला there was immediate opposition from China, immediate opposition from South Korea. South Korea second nation take mane tamara bhi hoche gote some hostile mane blow-out conversation. But Asian kata kedale badhiya asi kedale fer kami asi. Asian ठीक hoche. Tamar kintu that internal fear is there. Mane internal fear bolon ke concern bolon ke hatred bolon it is there. It will not go away. That so-called irritants of, I can say, the shadow of history or irritants of history. That remains. China to immediately, Achha, one more thing I'll tell you. Asian ka Japan, there is another angle. America koji je, tangar Asian ka TT alliance uche. So there are, I think, several bases in, American bases in Japan and South Korea. And I think 260 American soldiers placed there in several bases in Japan and 60,000 or so in South Korea. These soldiers can be immediately mobilized by Trump if he wants to join the war against Iran. अच्छे मैंने चाहे वाले करे पर भी तो जहाँ पे मन मर्जी करूँ जाए ना तो as a result there will be a security vacuum in both the countries. So, because they are here for security, for the protection of the security of both Japan and South Korea. So, when they pole level, vulnerability will certainly immediately increase. So, Trump is putting condition that you please increase your defense spending. Japan has imposed there is a self-imposed ceiling of defense spending not exceeding 1% of the GDP. Trump goes, you increase it and match by 5% as part according to the NATO standard. 5% যদি defense spending Japan probably will oppose. Number one. Number two. It will seriously dent the economy. Still, there has been incremental increase. So much so that now it is almost about 2%, nearly 2% exceeded or about to exceed now in Japan. This again has spread fear in the past victims of Japanese militarism. So things are actually complicated.
ଆପଣ ଜାପାନ ବ୍ୟାପାର ଉପରେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ଜାପାନର ସମ୍ପର୍କ ନେଇକରି ପାଷ୍ଟ ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ଫ୍ୟୁଚର ଗୋଟେ ବଢିଆ ପୁସ୍ତକ ଲେଖିଛନ୍ ଆପଣ ଟିକେ ଆମେ ଦେଖାମା ଟିକେ ବହି ବହୁତ ସୁନ୍ଦର ବହିଟେ ଲେଖିଛନ୍ ଯାହାର ଦାମ ପ୍ରାୟ 1200 ଟଙ୍କା ଅଛି इथरे किन किन जिनसों को बेसिकली हाईलाइट करा है ये पुस्तक रे ये बहिर
इनते तो मैं आगे भी बहुत मैंने बहुत बही लिखी जापान पे लेकिन बट ये लेटेस्ट है ये बहिर एक्चुअली मेन strength I would say main strength is derived from my many visits, the number of visits I have made in Japan, lived there for, and from closely observed. সেটাকে can see documentary evidence through নাইমিলে মানে suppose ଆପଣ ଗୋଟେ ଜାପାନିଜ ମୁଇଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ସଙ୍ଗେ କଥା ଲାଗୁଛେ କଥା ଲାଗଲା ସମୟରେ I am observing your mannerism, your thinking, your attitude, those kind of aspects, behavior. ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ କାଣା ରିପ୍ଲାଏ ଦେଲି କାଣା ଗୋଟେ କହିଲି ତ ଆପଣ କେମିତି ବି ରିପ୍ଲାଏ ଦେଲେ ଆପଣ ପର୍ସପେକ୍ଟିଭ କାଣା ମୁଁ ଶୁଣିଲି, those things are not documented. Those aspects are reflected in this book.
ଆପଣ ମାଇନ୍ୟୁଟଲି ଅବଜର୍ଭ କରିକି ସେ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକ ଏଥିରେ ଆପଣ
ରିପ୍ଲାଏ କରିଛି ମୁଁ ଏଥିରେ ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଆପଣ ଗୋଟେ ଭେରି ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟିଂ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଦେଉଛେ ତାର I don't have any documentary evidence of that. ମୁଁ କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଟା ମୋର ପର୍ସନାଲ ଏକ୍ସପିରିଏନ୍ସ କହୁଛେ 1979 ରେ that was my first visit to Japan 1979 ସେତେବେଳେ ମୁଇଁ ଟୋକିଓରେ ମୁଁ ପଢ଼ାପଢ଼ି କଲି ଫର अबाउट 2 weeks ମୁଁ ବୁଲିଲି ମୁଁ ଜାପାନରେ ମୁଁ ପୁରା ମାନେ I have traveled and visited more places in Japan than in India.
ଆଚ୍ଛା ପ୍ରାୟ ସବୁ ମାନେ କର୍ଣ୍ଣର ଆପଣ ବୁଲି
ବହୁତ ବୁଲିଛି ଆମେ ବହୁତ ବର୍ଷ ଯାଇଛେ ନା ଏଥର ରାସ୍ତା 2 ବର୍ଷ ଥିଲି ବି ମୁଁ 1979 ରେ ମୁଁ ଯାଇଥିଲି ହିରୋସୀମା ହିରୋସୀମାରେ I stayed with some Japanese friend in his house. Peace Museum भी देखिए हिरोशिमा पीस म्यूजियम वेरी टचिंग एक्चुअली सेनके जे भी तमाने प्रो न्यूक्लियर लोक माने थिंगर जो दिजिबो आसेन से फिरला बेले he will become anti nuclear सो vividly depict he is ना माने the effect of the nuclear radiation सेना में यार घरे में रहउतली तार पापा was an industrialist.
अच्छा
So he invited his son, that's how they say. Again, he called his son, he invited his son.
अच्छा
That poem was my mother has invited me and also you, well, for dinner. I'm going to say that old man at that time he was almost about 90. Had ke wale ye recording TV record order kichh nahi thai. I'm kotha no, he was speaking very good English, so I was in a position to converse comfortably. Se boila जे सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वार रे समय रे जापानीज मिलिटरी रो प्लान थिला कणा कुनन प्लान थिला जे ताको तो चली था एक्सपेंशनिज्म साउथ ईस्ट एशिया पूरा तमे कोलोनाइज कर दिले दे हैड रीच्ड अप टू इवन हमर मणिपुर तक पहुंची जितले नेताजी सुभाष चंद्र बोस रो रोल पुलिस सब एवरीथिंग इज हियर इन दिस बुक तो से ऑस्ट्रेलिया के समय में आखी भोगे थिले जापानीज मिलिटरी हैड आल्सो kept an eye on to colonize Australia. And they had already reached the northernmost part, Port Darwin. And when Port Darwin also, Japanese military had already attacked. और तको colony मैंने कोरी के जाके they will just and छोट population कि कहते वाले कहते तलाश नहीं भी कहते 24-27 मिलियन population कहते वाले मैं 14-15 कहते थे वो दे so it would have been very easy for them to capture Australia. सेत के बेल के बम फम रे पड़ला जन हारी गले बेले सब खरी गला जे तार प्लान काना थिला टू colonize Australia and Australia is almost about 2.5 more size than India, बहुत बड़ा है. They will colonize that and send a member of the imperial family as the emperor there.
Australia
ईटा कहेगा ई कुछ मते गोटे 90 वर्षर बुढ़ा मते कहला एटा 1979 रे मु तापरे खुचली मु एटा गूगल करी केन केन ता माने whether there is any documentary evidence नहीं मिलला मते I did find
बोले फर्स्ट टाइम ए बहिरे सा डिस्क्लोज हिजे को आजिबा
नहीं एटा बने लिखि आके बटा एटा नहीं लिखि कांगे बोले मोर एविडेंस है ना I can't cite it. तत केले जदी रेकॉर्ड जदी करी पड़ती I could have written it. मो पाखरे जदी लिखि देबी suppose somebody will question it I can't prove it. हेते बेले रेकॉर्डिंग एसु फैसिलिटी नहीं थी ई फोन थिले भी मो कर दी ना नहीं थे हेते बेले तो किंतु I could read the Japanese mind by hearing this personal experience like this based on so many such experiences I have. All these are reflected in this book. ई बोहिरो main thing it is a long introduction. There Buddhism, the earlier time, the visits of Raspberry Bose, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Then commoner even Hariprabha, Takeda, Oyeman, Rauta, matrimonial alliance, they married also, that is there. Then Bodhisena, who went in 752 AD in search of Manjusri, the Bodhisattva. She was in China, from China. He went, this Bodhisena is a Tamil Brahmin from Madurai. He was a monk. He wanted to meet Manjusri, the Bodhisattva. That is the Bodhi Sunitala. Well, he went in some commercial ship. There was a shipwreck, and some Indian trader traveling to Champa. There is a place called Champa in Vietnam, which is commercial base. Even now, there are some Hindu.
Achha.
Oh, yes. The Hindu presence in Vietnam is Champa city is very famous. He rescued him, and he himself also got converted into a monk. From there they went there, and then he went to China. After reaching China, he was told that Manjusri, their Bodhisattva, has gone to Japan. Buddhism didn't reach Japan directly.
Achha.
It went to Korea, from Korea to Japan, China, then from China to Japan. Then again he came back. Then he came back to Japan on the invitation of some official delegation who was there at that time in China, in Kaila. And then he met one Japanese monk who took him to the Japanese emperor, I think Emperor Sumpai. And that is the time when the Daibutsu means the big Buddha,
Achha.
that is in Nara, which was established there. And that time the emperor himself was the promoter of the Buddhism. All this I have explained in detail. And there was already a Buddha statue in Japan, in China. And this emperor wanted to make it bigger than that size to make the biggest Buddha statue in Japan. That was Daibutsu. And that was I have seen that. That is in Nara, the old city of, old capital of Japan. Seta Banitala Pore, at the Valley, there was an opening ceremony. There were about 30,000 monks who were invited from Mongolia, from Korea, from China, and also from Japan.
ବିଭିନ୍ନ countryରୁ invited.
And the copper collection of the entire country was collected and used for the making of the Daibutsu, and also imported. The opening ceremony, it's called the eye opening ceremony. Eye means there is a, suppose like a doll, Buddha. One eye will be painted. And the ceremony is the other eye, the monk will paint it.
Achha.
By painting this monk, the Buddha is reborn. It is a very powerful kind of message. Even now also some people are there. The milsi doll goda that a good side paint. Suppose you have some wish, fulfill other side to paint kare. So that honor was given to this Bodhisena, the Indian monk. So much of reverence the Indian monks had in Japan. This is the link, historical links. And जबकि जेन ब्रश से यूज करतेला, जेन यूटेंसिल्स से यूज करतेला, से ब्रश लो तमने जेन कपड़ा costume यूज करतेला, all these are now preserved in Nara in some museum. That I have not seen, but I have read it.
ଜାପାନୀ ମାନଙ୍କର ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରେ ସେମାନେ ଭାରତକୁ କେନ୍ ହିସାବରେ ଦେଖସନ୍?
As a spiritual place earlier, there historically, and they have that reverence, because this is I'll give another example, very interesting example. Mongolia Genghis Khan was a warrior. Genghis Khan was a short country. He ruled a major portion of the Europe, and the Central Asia. He controlled, and then he was also coming towards India. People say, I have not read it, but I have read. I think I have not read in detail, but I have heard somewhere. Probably, if you Google it, maybe we might find. He was on the way, and then somewhere near Iraq or Iran or somewhere, he saw a dream that India is a spiritual nation, is a nation of spiritual power, and if you go and invade India, that will be the beginning of your downfall.
Acha.
So from that dream, he realized that no, I think I must not go further. He went back from there. This is the image, even now. This is the the image that even Japanese also have. So is it not a very powerful image we have historically? Spiritually, we are a nation which is there, directly or indirectly. It finds reflection in our cultural policy, foreign policy. We are not basically invaders. This country has seen many invasions, but India has never invaded any country. So this is noticed.
भारत और जापान रे समानता कहाँ देखले आपण?
Asianness, which is also not recent, upon in the early part of the first decade of the 20th century, Rabindranath Tagore, when he visited in the first time, I think I think 3 times he visited, 3 or 5 times, 5 times I think, in 1912. About history jodi jibe 1980, it was Japan is a closed country for 200 years. Tokugawa period re Japan was a closed country for 200 years until 1868, when the Meiji Restoration took place. The Emperor Meiji was invited by these, the warlords, the Chosu and Satsuma. These two clans were actually, they are the two clans wherein always loggerhead, they were fighting. And then they had many daimos. Daimos means they are soldiers. And the daimos had their own small kingdom. And they were all fighting for the one clan, Satsuma and Chosu. At some point of time, there was some reconciliation they arrived at, and they said that no, I think we should restore our emperor. So Emperor Meiji, 1868, was restored, and that was the period when that phase of seclusion ended. 200 years. For 200 years, Japan was cut off from the world. No contact with any foreign country. Tarpore, the 1857, 1857, when that American Commodore Perry, actually he forced open Japan to the outside world. And then when there were introduction of Japan with the outside world, they could see what the country actually is missing and falling behind. So they realized that we must also see the progress, economic progress, material development, whatever, happening outside of Japan. And then they Korea ke gole, akpak country ke gole, asana dekhle. Or Japan is a country devoid of any resource, resource. Everything they are dependent on foreign country or foreign imports. So China, Korea ke gole, Korea slowly base for the same kind of thing when the East Indian Company came to Calcutta. Asiki tanga near and hukumat banale asa chapri say kind of ne bolson then gote jamin do che chapro motta hela. Same kind of policy. Or the Kole Jabardakal Bagata. Same that the Japanese Manager Korea Recole. Takar Tika Takat Vodiola, Cheske China ke Pala Horale, 1898. So Tapore Russia short country. China is a big country, but China was defeated. Then the other country, another bigger country, Russia was fighting 1904-5. Japan da Horidala. Treaty sign Hala. These two, a kind of, a dwarf defeating two giants. That is how the historians talk about it. Send a very huge, powerful message to the West. That is a new force emerging in Asia. This was a source of hope also for India. And that is the time when Rabindranath Tagore traveled to Japan, and highly impressed that Japan is a small country now, is now standing up against the European colonial power. There was a Japanese philosopher called Okakura Tenshin. He was a great Japanese philosopher, and he became a good friend of Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, and he wrote a book, Asia as number one, something like that. Sethere said he defined the Asianness, and it sent a very powerful message to India. And after Tagore came back, he spread that message also. Around that time, Vivekananda also traveled to Chicago to address 1893, and he also had a stopover in Japan. That was the route. So he also had a stopover in Japan, and he witnessed all this. And then he also advised the Indian youth to see Japan and emulate the good point, the positive aspects of Japan. So this is the এটা লাস্ট এটা 150 বছরের কথা কইছি আমি এটা আগর তো বুদ্ধিজম বিষয় কইলি and then it was a close country for 200 years তারপরে এখান থেকে মানে we are opened up এই ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়ার সময়ে there was no hostility from our side, but there is a lot of emotional as well as physical support. For example, সেই সময়ে রাসবিহারী বোস না শুনি জান
সুভাষ বসুঙ্কর
no, there is no link with that. No. Raspberry Bose was another freedom fighter. India, he was an employee of the British some company here in Calcutta, and then there are some strike and some opposition against some British officers, and he was accused of staging a coup. So the British soldier, they wanted to capture him and maybe punish him, and maybe would have killed him also. So he escaped. And he went to Japan. Japan had already signed one alliance with Britain, Anglo-Asian alliance. No, Anglo-Japanese alliance, 1910. So England and Britain put pressure on the Japanese government, Japanese military, that isko khali karo, isko humko do. Japanese people, they hid him, supported him. Here lies the love for us, love of the Japanese to the Indians. And there is a place called Shinjuku, and there is a restaurant there. Say Shinjuku is a restaurant, that owner gave him shelter there. Raspberry Bose, and from there he formed a group who actually mobilized the Japanese in support of the national movement in India. And that Raspberry Bose married finally one daughter of that restaurant owner. And then he supported later on, because once he had the support of the Japanese, he then roamed freely.
ଜାପାନୀ ମାନେ ଏତେ ଭାରତୀୟଙ୍କୁ ଭଲ ପାଇବାର ଭିତ୍ତିଭୂମିଟା କାରଣ ସେଇ ବୁଦ୍ଧ ଧର୍ମ.
Yes, that is the base. But Asian ka to amar cultural ଅଛି ନା, historical Asian ଅଛି. Actually it is a ମାନେ ଥରେ ଗୋଟେ ବ୍ଲଡ୍ ରହିଲେ କି ନାହିଁ, ରହିଛି ଏଟା, that respect. It is a question of mutual respect, in fact. It is a question of mutual respect.
ଦୁଇ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରି ଦୁଇ ଜଣଙ୍କର ଉପରେ କେନ୍ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ କେନ୍ ବିଷୟରେ ନିର୍ଭରଶୀଳ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ପରିପ୍ରେକ୍ଷୀରେ?
Politically, culturally and economically, in 3 fronts. Culturally, तो बेटा मैं कहली बेटा, that is the base, and that foundation is still there, and now it is current days this is being actually institutionalized by certain government government funded organizations. For example, our ICCR जहाँ से ना corruption activities, Japan Foundation also does the same thing here in India, and I have been fortunately a part of both in my life. 15 or 16 years I have worked with Japan Foundation office in New Delhi office. So I know in and out of the activities of Japan Foundation, which is a cultural promotion organization of the Japanese government under the overall supervision of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They call it MOFA. Similarly, Indian Council of World Affairs, which is the cultural wing of the MEA, our government, Ministry of External Affairs. It has got overseas offices in many countries, and there is a in Vivekananda Cultural Center in Tokyo, which operates within the embassy, Indian embassy there. And I was a ICCR chair professor there for 2 years.
अच्छा.
So I know that part also, so both. So that is at the governmental level. There are many exhibitions, art, film festival, that also support. Plus,
Socio-cultural.
not socio, purely cultural.
Only cultural.
Cultural, which has some academic component also. About the instituting of chairs. Chair on Tagore, chair on Gandhi, chair on Indian economy. Topic depending on the needs of the university where actually the chair is located based on MOU sign karve. And everything is supervised by the Indian embassy there. Same thing also here. That is the cultural part. Politically, our high level visits, summits, our strategic partnership, 2-on-2 dialogue, people to people contact Japan, our culture, there are several schemes also. There students go there, teachers go there, Japanese language training. So the cultural part has a very dynamic, comprehensive approach. It's not confined to only exhibition, symposium, or people. Students for 2 days. They are invited for 2 days. Both Japanese Ministry of Education भी अच्छे, Ministry Cultural अच्छे, Ministry MOPAR भी अच्छे. Similarly, हमारे भी government अच्छे. So it is a two-way. Politically, the same thing. Economically, they are not visible now. Honda, all this automobile sector, trade. Upon the jibe towards Jaipur, there is a Japanese economic zone. They are all dedicated. Korean economic zone. They are all dedicated.
Mobile phone reviews.
So, Japanese economic zone means a big, maybe I don't know how many acres, but big patch of land all is given where the major Japanese companies operating in India are based there. Where they will be having, and that is, and also that is self-generating power projects also are there. So they don't depend on the supposing power failure. They all manage there itself. Japanese school, Chivasana for the children of the employee, restaurants, Japanese food. Interestingly, Indian cuisine in Japan is extremely popular.
अच्छा.
Extremely popular. Tokyo area only there must be more than 400-500 restaurants, Indian restaurants.
Indian.
Though that food is not authentic Indian, but it is Japanized. It is actually catered to the Japanese taste. They can't take hot food at all. So, and when they come here, they love Indian food so much. They invariably इनके आशे के लिए पहला 7 दिन तक पेट खराब हो जाओ. मसला हजम करने पर ना. So, किंतु at the same time they also crave for their authentic Japanese food. Certainly, ये Japanese economic zone रे, से ना there are some dedicated Japanese restaurants where they can have the Japanese food. मुझे Japan for the Japanese staff, they had an official allowance twice a year to travel to Singapore or Thailand, to go there for maybe 2-3 weeks, and 2 weeks also, or maybe 1 week, for buying Japanese food, frozen food. And ताकर घरे माने घरे माने करे एडे बड़े थिला deep freezer सेना सब डम करबे. Those things are not available in India. आजकल ठीक मिली बसला ना, आजकल कोई जान जा रहा है imports also. तो these are all very interesting.
हमें तो चर्चा रो माने बंद करबा लागि इच्छा नै लागबा एते इंटरेस्टिंग अछि जे बंद करे इच्छा किंतु समय रो स्वल्पता अछि. प्राय चर्चा को हम शेष भाग रे आसी जाइछु.
आया
तो शेष रे उडे क्वेश्चन जानबा को चाहेमी. भारत और जापान रो संपर्क समग्र पृथ्वी रे केते प्रभावशाली.
In which way?
सामुदायिक भाव रे.
I would मु कहमी तो मैंने एक्चुअली दुनिया रे एटा गोटे रोल मॉडल बोली के देखबा कथा एक्चुअली. बिकॉज एते वर्षर आमे जिन प्रकार संपर्क अच्छे एतरे हेट्रेट न खाली प्यार अच्छे जिनटा कि अलगा एशियन कंट्रीज संगे प्यार भी अच्छे कि हेट्रेड भी अच्छे सेटाके आमर से हेट्रेड पोर्शन टाक अपन इन केबे ने पाइबे लाइक्स डिसलाइक तो एटा सिंपल वर्ड है हेट्रेड में केंति करी मैं कहूँ व्हाई आई एम यूजिंग द वर्ड हेट्रेड because of the historical experience which they have some of the countries have faced in the past from the Japanese actions like for military excesses Korea I can give example the Korean 35 years of colonial power in Japanese they had this on the Korean peninsula 1910 to 1945 when Japan was defeated 3 issues let me mention हेट्रेड को मैं एक्सप्लेन कर दिया मैंने डिफाइन कर दिया मैंने बुझो जाए देयर आर सेवरल इंस्टेंसेस एंड बहुत काम है रिसर्च भी बहुत है मैं भी लिखे लगी करी जाए मेनी ऑफ द कोरियन women were forcefully drafted to work in the work as brothels for the Japanese in the war front. They are all called comfort women. Ancient Tokbi, it is a huge emotional issue in Korea. Japanese government has given a lot of compensation, but compensation money cannot, cannot actually overcome this pain who the Korean face. That's number one. तारपरे comfort women or statue गुड़ा को बने करी not only in Korea, even some other foreign countries also माने Japanese embassy सामने रे माने install करी it became a big issue. और Japanese government negotiated 1965 ये treaty was Japan Korea तारो diplomatic relation established and everything was normalized बोल कहूँ चाहन किंतु Koreans are unwilling to face that. They said no, you cannot be you cannot claim to be free from your past actions. You are still guilt. You have to follow the they accept the fact that you have not expressed sincere remorse for your past acts. So current generation has no role. Past question, kintu it is Japanese. Second is many of the Japanese companies in Japan they hired Korean laborers, and when they went back after the defeat, their claims, तमारा जो गिच्चिटे लगी जायला, तमारा whatever claims they were due. The Japanese companies have not paid. The Japanese government has not paid. So they're claiming, and they went to the court, and the court also gave them gave a favorable verdict. So that is a sore point. Another sore point. So this is the hatred part. That part अच्छे. At the same time, they love because of the economic complementarity. जाना आना चली चे. So मैंने then common threat China they face. किंतु India संगरे I cannot use that word.
आम सिनेमा रे गीत आसुचे राजकपूर सिनेमा रे मेरा जूता है जापानी
हेटा तो अच्छे अब अच्छा सिनेमा कथा आपण उठा लेवल सिनेमा रे गुडे कथा कहि दुई जान आपण साउथ इंडियन ये जेंटा कि हमर नहीं सुनि देबे रजनीकांत रे गुडे फिल्म दे मुथु
अच्छा
मुथु नाम सुनि जान
हां मुथु
गुडे तेलुगु फिल्म दैट मोर फर्स्ट टाइम सुनली टोक्यो रे केबे 1992 रे मैं वर्षे थी 92-93 रे दैट मुथु फिल्म मैंने लगी रजनीकांत इज सुपर हीरो इन टोक्यो एस राजकपूर इज इन रशिया सो मच सो जे मते मोर गोटे जापानीज कलीग टे फ्रेंड टे से रेंटल सब से वीडियो आने के मते देला से टाके इटा प्लीज वॉच दिस बोली करी तो मुथु काना अच्छे से extraordinary thing I couldn't understand but I don't know why that even in Vietnam Indian films जितने है ना रिलीजियसी पूरा क्यों लगती है बड़े क्यों बड़ा लम्बा क्यों so this is a soft power actually this is our soft power also is very powerful a medium which Indian government is channelizing it so film what if as a part of the cultural diplomacy the soft power the cinema as a soft power component is a very powerful weapon which actually we should exploit and we're doing it.
एबे आमे शेष कर्मा चर्चा को
आज्ञा।
किंतु मु जेन प्रसंग रु आरंभ करथि से प्रसंग रे शेष कर्मा ई जेन युद्ध आ युद्ध परिस्थिति आ युद्धर प्रभाव इवन संबलपुर गली कंदी रे भी केभे सर्वाबागी आपन को दिसुची कि सर्वा कि नै सरे निकट भविष्य रे
सर्वाने कहीं रहेगा दीदीटा युद्ध वर्ल्ड वार हो गला खत्म है कि ना এটা কেতে দিন চলবা এটা খতম হবা এটা কিন্তু এশিয়ান কাটা দিস ইজ এ টেম্পোরারি এভারিয়েশন ये ट्रम्प इज नॉट ए मैन हु विल लिव फॉर एवर ही विल गो तार अग्रे भी खत्म हवा किंतु आमे टिके नीड पेशेंस खत्म नहीं हबार क्वेश्चन ही नहीं उठबार এটা खत्म हवा মানে सम डिफिकल्टी सम डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशन आमे बोली कि नहीं द एंटायर वर्ल्ड इज फेसिंग एनर्जी एक्चुअली इज इम्पैक्टिंग मेरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी ऑल दिस आर रिलेटेड इश्यूज अच्छे बहुत अच्छे but nations affected are addressing those things और खत्म है पाएगा क्या नहीं हुआ है कितने कितने दिन चलवा तीन एडेड बॉर्ड विश्व युद्ध खत्म ही गला इटा के क्या करने रहेगा और one final thing I'll tell you nuclear weapon जन प्रभाव टा जन humanity has faced from Hiroshima and Nagasaki कैंसी भी बुद्धू कंट्री कितने पागल है लेवी कि नहीं नॉर्थ कोरिया रा देखो नि धमकी दूजे बट डू यू थिंक ही विल यूज इट ही विल नेवर यूज इट तार पाखे रखचे एज ए मीन्स ऑफ रिजिम सर्वाइवल मोर पाखे अच्छे बेले मते केहे हिम्मत ना कर अटैक करबार लगी बिकॉज ट्रम्प जदी करबा ताको जे अटैक ये तो मरी जावा तब कटी उड़ी जावा किंतु ये किम जोंग उन दुई चारटा शहर बेन उड़े दवा तो द वर्ल्ड नोज इट तो नोबडी विल यूज इट तो युद्धर मैंने यूज ऑफ न्यूक्लियर वेपन आप भूली जाओ नोबडी विल यूज इट इवन इंडिया भी पाकिस्तान भी ये काଣା बोलला हमर बचपाई जेते बेले कहितला हमर ये पाकिस्तान रखि के जिन थला लीडर पर थ्रेटन टू यूज न्यूक्लियर बॉम्ब अगेंस्ट इंडिया बचपाई हेतले थली प्राइम मिनिस्टर ओके यू यूज आई विल लूज वन सिटी बट पाकिस्तान विल बी वाइप्ड आउट फ्रॉम द मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड
रोकठोक कहितले रोकठोक कहितले
बस दैट इज द रियली बॉटम लाइन इज दिस एतिले जन कहले न मते एटा केते दिन चलवा खत्म होबा हम टिके वेट करू
धैर्य धरवा
ना बेसी समय जल्दी जब देखबे खत्म हो जाबा बिकॉज वर्ल्ड इज सफरिंग एंड माने एटा माने गोटे वर्ल्ड जनता मन करंतु गोटे यूनिवर्सिटी रे सम पुलिस लेके ऑपोजिशन चला स्ट्राइक हला ऑपोजिशन माने हो हला ऐसी दुनिया सारा तो गोटे एरिया रो एशिया रो तो गोटे हो हला कि एटा तो हेने पारे ना एटा डिप्लोमेसी इज एट वर्क तो डिप्लोमेसी विल वर्क एंड इट विल बी डिफ्यूज्ड
तो दर्शक बंधु आमे यहाँ तक देखुला शुणुला जानुला डॉक्टर राजाराम पंडा को एवं तांकर जरिया आमे विदेश नीति विभिन्न राष्ट्र संगे भारत रो संपर्क विशेषकर भारत और जापान रो संपर्क केंता थिला केंता अच्छे आगू केंता रहबा तार संगे युद्ध बाबद रे भी सम्यक किछि किछि जानला अनेक कथा आज्ञा कही गले अनेक जिनस जानवार अच्छे ये कथा कथा भितर गोटे बंज कथा कहले जे युद्ध इटा अधिक दिन नहीं चले जिते प्रथम विश्व युद्ध द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध सेटा किछि किछि समय धरी चलता इटा भी ये युद्ध भी सरवा इतार भी समय अच्छे आमको टिके धैर्य धरवा पड़वा आ भारत तो हेंती शांति मैत्री कथा कहसी सौहार्द्यर कथा कहसी तो सेथिर लगी भारत आगामी दिन रे वसुधैव कुटुंबकम जेन मंत्र आम कही पहलानु से मंत्र को लेकर आगू बढ़ुचे आ भारत और जापान जेन विशेषकर शताब्दी धरिक जेन संपर्क चलचे से संपर्क सेटा भी सही शांति मैत्री सौहार्द्यर संपर्क जेन कि द्वेष नाई न जेन घृणाभाव नाई न आ सेटा ही भारत जेन आध्यात्मिकतार सेटा होचे मूल मंत्र समस्त को स्नेह श्रद्धा प्रेम मैत्री ये विषय समस्त को मन रखवा पड़वा आज समय देले इतले आपन को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद
नमस्कार
दर्शक बंधु आपन को भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद
राष्ट्र सर्वोपरि राष्ट्र प्रथम सदा सर्वदा।